A living memory. Were the people from Quetzaltenango destined to have one of the most advanced railroads of Latin America? Did President Ubico knew what he was doing? Did the people's rights have to be violated? How did President Ubico's decision affect Guatemala, especially Quetzaltenango's economy? Between the first speeches said as the railroad made its first entrance to Quetzaltenango station, these words said by Mr. Francisco Castellano Monterroso in the name of the committee were remembered as follows. As all the major human enterprises, Los Altos Railroad has had its opponents, some through ignorance, others for system, and others by selfishness. But these obstructionist trends, eminently conservative, have nothing able to achieve before the mood turned and firm of the great patriots who postponed their special interest to nationals. Beat and overcome always in the struggle of good against evil. In the year 1902, Guatemala experienced a terrifying earthquake which was called San Perfecto, and in the same year they also experienced an eruption made by volcano Santa Maria, which really affected Quetzaltenango. As a phoenix bird, Quetzaltenango resurged out of the ashes with new ideas and new goals. The people in Quetzaltenango were starting to be open-minded people. A new Quetzaltenango had a great potential. They just needed to think about all the possibilities. The people from Quetzaltenango wanted to develop more economically, and after the earthquake and eruption, they needed to do something to advance and reconstruct the city. The people needed something that would transport coffee, sugar, and anil. At first it was thought to build a trolley, afterwards a steam train, but finally it was decided an electric train. This implied the creation of a hydroelectric power plant for the obtaining of the electricity needed for the train's movement. That hydroelectric power plant was called Santa Maria, and its construction began in 1921 in Sunil, Quetzaltenango, Guatemala. The hydroelectric plant got the current from the Samala River. In 1927, the hydroelectric power plant, Santa Maria, was finished and it was ready to provide the train with energy. It was going to satisfy the demand of 10,000 kilowatts. The total of young people working there were 660. The plant costed about $1,500 million US. A tunnel was also being built the same year as the power plant because they needed a barrier in a plain and dry terrain for the job to be 100% safe. Engineer Hartman said, for the construction of the tunnel, 567 cartridges of dynamite, 282 fulminants, 1,210 feet of wick, and 24 pounds of black gunpowder were used in total. The project of the power plant was a great advance for the city of Quetzaltenango, but the main advance for the city was the railroad. The railroad had plans on being built since 1899. There were papers signed by the government to start building it. After the papers were signed and everything was ready to start, there were some problems. In 1914, the work was suspended for 1 year because of World War I. There was also not an advance because the current president, Estrada Cabrera, was substituted for the president Jose Maria Orellana. Time passed, but until 1921, the people took action and actually started building the major things. The railroad was planned to go through Llano del Pinal, Xecaracoj, Tierra Colorada, covering all the zone of Parajunog to arrive at Palmar, San Sebastián, and Torretauleu, then passing by Cantel, Sunil, Aguas Amargas, Santa María de Jesús, Pirineos, La Dicha, and finally getting to the main station in Quetzaltenango. The people were really eager to have one of the best transportation systems. Because the terrain was complicated, there was need to hire a German company. The company that was hired was from Berlin, Germany, in short words called AEG. In 1922, the contract was signed with AEG, but until 1924, the central government approved it and published it in newspapers. AEG would manage the electric parts, and the company KRUPP would be in charge of the manufacture of the railways the train would travel by. Now the question was, where would the Quetzaltecos get the money from? The capitalistic Quetzaltecos donated huge amounts of money. Also, the National Legislative Assembly passed a decree in 1921 that stated that 3 extra quetzales would be charged for the ones who bought liquor across the country, which would be saved for the construction of the railroad. Between 1922 and 1930, the AEG company and the Quetzaltecos had some struggles, but they worked hard to see this project succeed. Some engineers that were remembered working on this company were F. Shaw and F. G. Andros from the United States of America, and from Germany, George Hartmann, and for Quetzaltenango, Lucas T. Kohulun. There were 14 wagons in total, and they were purchased by the Belgian company called Familielogs de la Logier. There was first, second, and third class seats. The train normally used 6 wagons but if needed, other wagons could be added for transporting goods or more people. Every wagon had its own engine for safety. The brakes were done by electromains, and when proving its safeness, they were ready for the ignition. The ignition took place at the central station of Quetzaltenango on the 30th of March of 1930. Young to old were really excited, and there was even a marimba melody played at the ignition created by Domingo Betancourt called El Ferrocarril de Los Altos. The people were their base finery. National and international authorities were present that day too. The railroad imposed global brands in Latin America and broke some records at that time, which were recorded in papers and books. The railroad traveled 44 kilometers from Quetzaltenango to Retauló, passing through San Felipe. San Felipe was 614 meters above sea level, while Quetzaltenango was at 2,333 meters above sea level, so the railroad had to ascend a slope called Los Pirineos. The happiness couldn't last that long, and in September 1933, the railroad gave its last trip. The railroad matched up with the same years as the Great Depression. In the year 1930 and 1931, the Great Depression made the cost of the coffee decrease 75% of its actual price, and for the first time, Guatemala experienced economic deflation. The volume of cargo and of people in the train decreased remarkably. To make things worse, a tropical storm struck Guatemala, destroying major railways of the path, and fixing it was expensive. But the Quetzaltecos were willing to unite forces, and with their hands they would reconstruct the railways, so their dreams would not die. But the central government was not willing to cooperate, which at that time the president was Jorge Ubico, and that's how the hatred towards Ubico began. Ubico was denying all the help of the people for reconstructing the railways, and even prohibiting free work by the people and donations too. The last steps for the rehabilitation of the railroad were done in 1934 by the mayor of Quetzaltenango, without getting help from the central government. That was how the railroad died, leaving behind the dreams and rights of the people, especially the ones of the Quetzaltecos. President Jorge Ubico made the railroad be discontinued and dismantled through the years. As president, Ubico had the responsibility to look out for his country and do what was best for it. The railroad was providing with money because the exports could travel faster. Ubico was being selfish and ignorant by dismantling the railroad because the railroad was advanced technology, making an income for Guatemala. He did not make a good decision with the responsibility he had for the country. The people from Quetzaltenango had the right to develop technologically and financially. They also had the right to decide whether or not they would dismantle it. They had the right to also develop more economically because they were getting money and they would have been really prosperous, and also technologically because at that time the railroad was the most advanced transportation of Latin America. Ubico did not care for the rights the Quetzaltecos had and took his own right and power to dismantle it, and he is responsible for the delay of Quetzaltenango. There was an economic delay because a lot of money was lost and wasted because the investment of the railroad and the hydroelectric power plant had a cost of 10 million quetzales, which at that time it was a lot of money, and it was hard to get up again, and the technological delay was because Quetzaltenango did not have any more advanced things, and since the economy was bad, they could not afford anymore a lot of high technology. Overall, the choice that Ubico made on dismantling the railroad really affected the economy in Quetzaltenango. His choice made us what we're now, the economy we have and the technology we have. But Quetzaltenango has been growing, and that memory still lives in the people's hearts.